I call this meeting, special meeting of the Kingman City Council to order at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, August 18th, 2020. This is a special meeting, and let's go ahead though and have the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Indivisible, with liberty. The council may go into executive session for legal counsel in accordance with ARS 38-431-0383 to discuss any agenda item. The following items may be discussed, considered, and decisions made relating thereto. Shall we have a roll call vote? We'll go ahead and do that.
Mayor Miles,
Present.
Vice Mayor Lingenfelter,
Present.
Councilmember Mello Keener,
Present.
Councilmember Nelson,
Here.
Councilmember Scott Staley,
Present.
Councilmember Watkins,
Here.
and Councilmember Wade.
I'm here, thank you.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Annie. So the special meeting agenda order of business is resolution number 5292, canvass of the August 4th, 2020 primary election. Arizona revised statutes require the governing body to canvass this type of election within 6 to 20 days of the election. Election materials will be available online prior to the meeting for inspection by the council and/or public. Staff recommends approval of resolution number 5292. There were attachments showing the polling results, and I assume the council has had a chance to look at those. Is there any discussion on this, or I would entertain a motion from the council? To approve resolution 5292.
Mayor, I will move that I will approve resolution 5292.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Is there a second?
I second it.
Thank you, Councilor Watkins. Is there any discussion? Hearing
I'd just like
none.
to say, Madam Mayor, if I could, congratulations to yourself and to Councilor Staley and the new incoming council members. Great job to everybody. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, and I add that congratulations to Councilor Staley and on her re-election and on the new council members that were elected. So all in favor of approval of resolution 5292, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. So now we will move into the regular meeting of the Kingman City Council on August 18th, 2020 at a little after 5 p.m. We've already had the roll call. I think that will still hold, but we have an invocation tonight that will be given by Kip Anderson of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Hello, Mr. Anderson, and thank you for doing this.
Beth, thank you. I'll go ahead and offer that prayer now. Thank you. Our dear Father in heaven, we bow our heads this evening and as at the beginning of this council meeting, grateful for the opportunities to live in this good land, grateful to live in our good community, to live here in Kingman. We're grateful for those who serve on the city council, for our mayor and for those others on the council. We pray thy blessings to be with them. Guide them in their actions, guide them in their thoughts, and help them to make decisions that will be sound, that will benefit the good people of this area, and be a blessing to the citizens. We're grateful for the rain that we're receiving this evening, and pray that we might continue to receive moisture and blessings here with the rain and the moisture. We're thankful for those who serve our country. We ask a blessing to be with them. Watch over and protect them. We pray a blessing on the leaders of our nation. Bless them with guidance and direction as well. We thank thee, Father, for all that we have. We acknowledge thy hand in our behalf Again, we pray a blessing on the council this evening as they deliberate and as they make decisions. Might they be blessed and strengthened. And help us and bless those that are affected by the pandemic and the COVID-19. Might they be blessed as well. We ask and pray for these blessings, giving thanks again for all that we have in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Annie, would you put the flag up again, since some may watch this meeting separately from the special meeting? I'd like to go ahead and do the pledge again. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first order of business, the council may go into executive session for legal counsel in accordance with ARS 384103A3 to discuss any agenda item. The following items may be discussed, considered, and decisions made relating thereto. And the first order of business is appointments. Parks, Aquatic, Recreation, and Golf Commission appointment. The Park Commission, December 31st, 2020. At this time, or Andore, I don't know which way it's pronounced. Staff recommends the appointment of Andor to the Park Commission for the remainder of the term ending December 31st, 2020. We received a statement from the candidate. Annie, do you have that available to read to the council?
I do. This statement is from Ann Dorr. She said, I am passionate about the parks in Kingman because they contribute to healthy lifestyles, foster a sense of community, bring children and families together, and provide beautiful green spaces, which are positive psychological factors for everyone. In short, I would like to see Kingman Parks become the best that they can be.
Thank you, Annie. So we have a candidate, and I know that it's Councilor Malachino. Are you the representative to that commission?
I am, Mayor, and I would like to move that we appoint Ann Dorr to the Parks, Aquatic, Recreation, and Golf Commission for the remainder of the term until it's ending December 31st, 2020.
That was a motion.
Yes, please.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Wait. We have a motion and a second to appoint Ms. Dorr to the Park Commission for the remainder of the term. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. And thank you so much, Ms. Dorr. We welcome you to the commission and appreciate your service very much. Next order of business is called to the public. Those wishing to address the council should fill out requests in advance. But since this is a virtual meeting, public comments and in-person attendance is suspended for this meeting due to COVID pandemic, doing it, of course, through technological means. And public comments were to be submitted in writing to the city clerk's office via email to the clerk, or by placing them in a drop box at the city complex, or by mailing them to 310 North 4th Street in Kingman. Comments were accepted up to 9 a.m. this morning on August 18th, 2020. All comments will be shared with the council and made a part of the public record. Members of the public can watch or listen to the meeting live via channel 4 or on YouTube at youtube.com/City of Kingman. Annie, we had, was it 24 comments submitted?
There were 23 comments submitted for call to the public, and those were shared with council this morning.
Okay, and those were all distributed to a little after 9 this morning. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. All of these 23 emails were comments from people who oppose the mask mandate, my proclamation, basically, all of them. And the council received them a little after 9 this morning and has had a chance, I hope, to look at every one of them. They are somewhat uniform in all of their comments. And I'm going to synthesize those because some of them have pages of references and links. And since they are being added to the public record in totality, and so everything will be in the public comment section in the minutes of the next meeting, of this meeting, I mean, I will just comment on the essence of these as I saw it, as I read all of them. The first is to slow the spread of the coronavirus. And they cite some things they think support that. They also believe that the mask mandate is unconstitutional and infringes on personal liberty or personal freedom. So that is something that they comment on. And or that wearing masks is unhealthy and hazardous to one's health, and they cite references to support what they believe, that belief. And also that they say the mask mandate causes fighting in public and disagreement among people, because and that those who refuse to wear them are looked at sometimes with demeaning looks by those who are wearing masks. I think all of those comments were included in some form or fashion throughout the 23 people that commented. I would also mention that of those that submitted comments, I think probably only about a third of them, if that, were actual Kingman residents. But they will all be in the record, and anyone that would like to read the specific comments and or go to the links and the references that are made will be able to do that when they are in the minutes. So now I will move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed here are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Do any of the council members have a consent agenda item they would like to remove?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to remove item G, please.
Item D.
G as in Gary. G as in Gary.
So not D as in dog.
No, G as in golf.
Just one.
Yeah, just one. Just G as in golf. Thank you.
Just
Madam
G.
Mayor,
Okay. Yes, Counselor.
I would like
Watkins.
to remove item J just for some more discussion.
Okay. So anyone else? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through I with the exception of G. G and J, I should say.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items G and items J.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Do I have a second?
I
I'll
second that.
second.
Okay, Councilor Watkins, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda except for G and J. All in favor, aye? Aye.
Aye.
Annie, can you hear this? Can you get the vote?
Yes, ma'am.
It's unanimous aye.
It is.
Okay, it's unanimous aye. So the consent agenda passes with the exception of G and J. Item G, approval for contract amendment with Lisa Wise Consulting, Inc. Lisa Wise Consulting, Inc. is currently under contract for consulting services related to the zoning ordinance update and expansion of the historic overlay district project. This contract will bring the contract to conclusion and include the scope of work from the original contract as well as additional items that have been identified due to their importance within and after the project completion. Staff recommends approval of the amendment to the number 1 prime agreement. Lisa Weiss Consulting, Inc. agreed to amend the prime agreement dated June 18th, 2019 for the City of Kingman contract for consulting services, zone ordinance update, and expansion of the Historic Overlay District project. Vice Mayor, to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I pulled this item specifically with respect to the expansion of the Historic Overlay District component. Perhaps I'm wrong, but I thought that we were going to have some additional discussion about exactly what that was going to entail. And as the liaison for our Historic Preservation Commission, I thought we were going to have some more discussion with them to see what the scope really needed to be for this. I don't understand really, and that discussion has not happened with our commissioners as to this point. So I just, question, do we even want to expand the Historic Overlay District? And if we do, what does that really look like? And is everybody in agreement with what that looks like? Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'll turn this over to Manager Foggen for information.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that Chris and his team have been working on this, and I would turn it over to Chris or to Rich, if whoever's been assigned to work on this project, to actually answer the question and talk about how this came to be and what the plan is going forward. Chris? Rich? Anyone?
Thank you, Mr. Foggen.
Oh, there you go. Woo.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council. Yes, that is correct. Part of the historic overlay is part of the contract amendment. We do plan on coming back to council with the plan for the historic overlay. The problem is that we're on point and on track to try to keep the zoning code updated and by the end of December or the first part of January, but there's so much work involved with the historic overlay. The last presentation to the council, we got direction that that was an initiative that they wanted. So that's going to take an extra 3 to 4 months. And it was decided that we'll continue with the land use code amendment minus the historic overlay district and the Historic Preservation Commission rewrite. And that'll lag about 3 to 4 months behind the zoning code update.
I guess my thought is, what exactly does the expansion include? Because I think that there's a lot of varying opinions upon what that expansion, if any expansion at all, should include. And I think that we owe the Historic Preservation Commission at least a little bit more conversation to help flush out what the scope of that would maybe look like. I just feel like we're being put into a position of trying to approve some sort of an expansion. We really don't understand clearly what that expansion is supposed to include as far as the scope.
We staff plans on meeting with the Historic Preservation Commission on September 22nd to bring them into the loop. It was still, excuse me, unclear to just recently of how long this admin draft was going to take us to complete. We're still not quite complete. We're in the home stretch. We plan on having all components of the land use or the land zoning code update completed and ready for public draft review by the end of August. But again, the historic preservation component is not going to be part of that. So we'll be meeting with the Historic Preservation Commission September 22nd, bringing them on board. We'll finish the zoning code update, and then we'll focus on just a historic overlay district expansion, proposed expansion that hasn't been created yet. We're currently working with Lisa Weiss Consultants and Carl
Eberhard.
Eberhard,
Mhm.
on what that'll look like. So it's still in its planning stages, if you will.
Thank you for that, Chris. Me personally, I just feel very hesitant to approve this tonight without having more discussion with our commissioners about what this really needs to entail. Once you expand the historic overlay, there's a lot of things that are going to affect a lot of business owners and property owners downtown. So you only get one shot at doing it. So tonight I'm just really hesitant to approve something right now until we have some more discussion about what we're really after. Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask Mr. Foggen a question about this?
Yes, go ahead.
So
Councilor
Ron,
Staley.
what I understand is happening is the consultant is putting all this together for us, as we've hired consultants to do in the past. They'll put together a plan. It'll go to the public for input. It'll go to the commission, and then it would roll up to the city council for final approval. Isn't that correct?
I believe that is the steps we've talked about. I wanted to remind everybody that the last time that we had the presentation from the consultant, that was outlined. And one of the things that the council was interested in is kind of at least one, if not a hybrid of a couple of the options that were laid out. And to have those looked at is kind of where this conversation led us to saying, okay, consultant, the council is interested in looking at these, possible options. Those options, of course, where Chris had mentioned, that's where those options would be talked about with the Historic Preservation Commission, as well as the Planning Commission. And then that would, yes, roll up to the council. But that's kind of where we found ourselves, is that we're trying to finish the thought process, or the kind of what the council wanted to look at, and looking at that hybrid and the different options is kind of put the consultant to this point where they're like, we're happy to move forward, but it's going to be an addition to the original scope. So.
Sure, they're not going to do that work for free.
Yeah, no, and we anticipated talking about it. So the vice mayor is spot on. I mean, we always anticipated having this final piece of this go through the process. If it was, in fact, the council's interest in looking at, just as a reminder, we felt like when it was presented that the council had kind of given the head nod that they wanted to continue to move forward. So that's why this has progressed to this point.
Thank you. That's what I thought.
So I guess the reality is that once the plan is kind of developed, that it will go, as Councilor said, to the public, to the commission, and to the council. I guess if I'm hearing Vice Mayor correctly, he's wondering if the commission should be involved in the planning stage. Is that correct, Vice Mayor? Before
Mayor Miles, yeah. I apologize. I'm getting just a slight delay on my side, but
I am too.
It's gotta love Zoom. No, I appreciate everybody's information, and yeah, I think that's right. It sounds to me that the consultant through this part of the amendment would be leading a scoping exercise with all parties, all stakeholders. And then whatever all those stakeholders, including council, would agree to, that's what they would actually go to incorporating into our zoning code. I think that's what I'm hearing, and I guess that's fine. I get a little scared about expanding the historic component and making a bunch of regulations that are hard to comply with downtown. But I mean, if they're going to be going through the scoping exercise, then okay, that makes more sense to me. Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor,
Okay,
Mayor, this is Ron again. Yeah, and that's, I just wanted to reinforce that that's where we're working from. So anticipated, as we looked at those options or as they were laid out by the consultant, as I said before, the council had liked at least one of those options, or maybe a combo that just really needed to be explored with, as the vice mayor said, the stakeholders. And that's ultimately, we want to have something that makes sense for our downtown, that isn't onerous, and that accomplishes the overlay concept that we envision. So that's really where we are. So thank you.
Thank you, Manager Foggin. Okay, Vice Mayor.
I don't have any other questions, but I want to just thank everybody. I appreciate the discussion on this item. It's appreciated. Thank you so much.
Then I would entertain a motion to approve item G.
Motion to approve item G.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve item G. All in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Hearing no opposition, ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. And I have moved to try to get away from dogs. Yeah, Zoom. Okay, item J. Fiscal year 21 pavement preservation project. This agenda item is for consideration and approval of the fiscal year 21 pavement preservation cycle. The attached proposal includes arterial and collector streets. Sorry, I lost it. Collector streets selected for maintenance. Staff recommends approval. Councilor Watkins.
I just wanted to bring this up for discussion and just make sure that everybody has more information. As always, I want to thank our streets department and the job that they do. I think they do a really good job trying to stay within budget, save money, and be safe. I had a number of longtime Kingman residents ask me, because in the past they had seen our street department do the chip sealing, oiling, that kind of stuff in-house, with the thought of trying to save money and as opposed to paying a company that's obviously going to make money. But I also know that sometimes that equipment wears out and it's not cheap to replace, and maybe that's where we're at that point. So I want to get some more input from Public Works and clarify that. And that way the public understands why this money is being spent.
Thank you. That's a good point. Manager Foggin.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. The opportunity to educate and provide information is really, really appreciated. The one thing that I do want to point out is that we are continue to work with really limited resources for our pavement preservation program. And that's a great question, Councilor Watkins. And so I want to turn the time over really to either Jack or Rob, probably Rob, but he's willing, and if he's wanting to have someone else speak, he can. But I'll let Rob speak to and answer the question with regards to equipment and versus us preserving versus paying someone to help us preserve. Rob?
Thank you, sir. I do have Mr. Plotty here, so.
Oh, there he is.
There we go.
Yeah, Rob descended in years, huh? Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Councilman Watkins, to answer your question, in the past, the City of Kingman Street Department did do a lot of chip sealing. What's different in this, there is some chip seal, but it's actually a scrub seal. It's a little tougher. And then also on the arterial collectors, the equipment we have is old. It doesn't lay down as nicely. You have a lot more loose chips because you can't calibrate it as well. So in that instance, we did have the contractor take care of those scrub seals. Everything else, there's some crack seal and some fog seals in there. That's all contract driven or contractor driven as far as the fog seals go. We could do some crack seal, and our intent when we get to where we can fund residential is we would probably pick that back up. But on the arterial collector roads, just from a manpower standpoint and then also equipment, we opted to have that contracted out.
Thank you, Jack. Councilor Watkins, any other questions or comments?
I think that's really the point of it all. I know someone else had mentioned that they had heard the county bought a new chip sealer, but I'm sure, I don't know if there's any way we can do intergovernmental trading on that kind of stuff. I don't know. I'm sure Jack has probably investigated this, but once again, I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, we actually do have a IGA count currently in the county for work share. We recently utilized that for the striping throughout town. Mojave County completed that for us.
Yes.
And that can go one of two ways. We can either just pay them the rate for the labor, or we can do a work share. We actually have talked with the county in the past about doing an IGA utilizing that IGA for chip seal. Part of that is a timing sequence that we can definitely work out. But like I say, between now and the next cycle, I think we could work through some of that. The problem that we do run into is the number of staff we have to maintain just general shoulder grading, weed abatement, those sorts of things. It takes a pretty decent toll between going in and getting shoulders prepped if needed, patching, and then spending, the 2-week or 3-week period chip sealing. And then we got a pretty decent amount of cleanup afterwards for doing cleanup and then restriping. And like I say, that ties into it. If we can work something out with the county, I don't know what the county's current manpower availability is, but it's something we'll continue to look at.
Well, Jack, thank you. I appreciate you. And it sounds like you've done your homework as always, and that you've investigated different ideas. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
I have nothing more, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Then I would entertain a motion to approve item J, fiscal year 21 payment preservation project.
I would move that we approve item J, payment.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item J for the pavement preservation project. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. No opposition, ayes carry it. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, old business, Parklet Pedlet program revision. The Parklet Pedlet program is approved for a 50-50 match and a $5,000 max reimbursement. The Economic Development Team is recommending to revise the program to offer a 90-10 match with a maximum of $9,000 reimbursement to match the facade improvement program. This revision will assist small businesses in downtown to expand their businesses beyond the building front, which will allow for more customers to be served while meeting social distancing guidelines. Staff recommends approval. Manager Foggin, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So in a few visits with some of our downtown businesses, the thing that they've been running into is the need to expand due to the pandemic and to be able to serve customers with the limitations with how many people they can serve inside. The effort has been to go outside, and there has been some effort by some of our local restaurants to go outside, and I think they've met with some success, but it's been moderate. And in talking with our downtown businesses, it was suggested that one of the things that would be of interest is a little bit nicer, something that would accommodate a few more people and dining, as well as perhaps some shading. And so as we looked at the programs, of course, we've set aside in the budget that the council approved was $90,000 for facade improvements and pedlet parklets. And so in kind of hearing that feedback, we thought, well, this is one area that if we can help a little bit more and we can get some help to the businesses that need that and they feel like that would improve their business, we thought, well, that's probably a good way to go. So I've asked Gary and his team, I think Sylvia, you're familiar with, has worked on this program. It was kind of funny, we were laughing about old business because this has been on old business a couple times. But just turn it over to Sylvia to kind of fill in the blanks on it. Miss Sylvia.
Hi, Sylvia.
Hi, good evening. So, we did have a good intro there. So what's left is that basically we do have a couple applicants that have began the process. And the inclusion of the architect has been also helpful to this process so that we have more interested in participating in the program. So that's pretty much where we've been, like the status of where we're at with the 2 applicants that are currently in process. But it is true that, when we went out and talked to some of the businesses that taking this program to a 90/10 would definitely assist, especially during this time, because when we first initiated the project, it was basically prior to COVID. And it would assist with extending the capacity of customers out into the, beyond the facade, since we're at like 50% interior capacity. And so it would help. Definitely, there's a high interest in increasing the program to a 90/10. Do you have additional questions for me that might not have been covered already?
So I'll just jump in before you take questions, Mayor. I know that today we received an email from Terry Thompson with regards to kind of a new estimate on the idea that that these parklets, the parklets that have been talked about maybe need to be expanded, and that the anticipation of the shade and the need or the ability to provide some kind of misting systems with them and power, that Terry was estimating that the parklet that he's envisioning would be $45,000 or $50,000. And just wanted to mention that as part of, that hasn't been really a part of the conversations that we've originally been in conversation with, but did receive that, that look at the parklet idea from Mr. Thompson today. And I believe that Annie had sent that out just as information, so that the council knew that was where he was coming from on it. Like I said, from when we worked on this prior to COVID to through the budget process, we thought that it was absolutely something that we could bump up. I can't say that we anticipated a parklet costing kind of that amount of money, a little bit shocking. But just wanted to make sure I mentioned that as that had come in. And so anything else to add, Sylvia, with regards to that? I interrupted you a little bit, I apologize.
No, that's all I had.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And thank you for mentioning Mr. Thompson's email. We did get it, but that's a sizable jump. But I would, at this point, ask the council if there are questions or questions for Manager Foggin or Sylvia in particular. Any further questions?
I have a question, Madam Mayor.
Certainly, go ahead.
So I just want to understand with the email from Mr. Thompson, it's still, are going to reimburse up to $9,000. That's it.
That is currently what we're proposing. And finance-wise, if the thing that I guess I would point out is that any increase above and beyond that is, as I pointed out, this money for the Parklets Pedlets program is shared with the facade grant program. And maybe Sylvia, you could tell everybody, I think there's a number of facade grant applicants in the process already. And maybe Sylvia, you could just fill us in on that really quick.
Absolutely. So we have about 6 applicants already in process for the facade improvement program. Again, once we added the addition of the architect, it definitely added more interest in going to a 90/10. Definitely put more people into the application process. So at this point, we have about 6 that have already met, almost 6 that met with the architect and are working on their plans to submit. So that's about 6 people that are, maybe eligible up to a 9,000 reimbursement already. And there's a 7th that inquired today. So it is definitely taking, people are taking interest in the program. And then also with facade, it is citywide. So we've only touched a lot of the businesses, and there's still plenty more that could take advantage of facade improvement program. Parklets, as a reminder, is eligible for businesses on Beale Street between 2nd and 6th. So that one is a limited area versus facade.
Thank you, Sylvia. Any other questions?
I have a question. It's probably for both staff and the council. When we're talking about building a $45,000 and up parklet, I mean, that's a very large investment. This is still kind of a pilot program. We haven't tried one yet. And if it doesn't work out and there are problems, how are we going to ask a business to tear down that investment or to move it? I have some real concerns when we haven't had, even a basic one rolled out to see what it does to parking and traffic and that kind of thing. I mean, look, I love this program. I think it's great. They're really neat. But when we talk about a business putting that much on the line on public property in a parking lot, it's a risk. And I hope that we would have something more concrete in terms of a contract that makes sure everybody knows that this could be removed after a year.
Thank you, Councilor Staley.
Mayor, the one thing that Councilor Staley brings up a great point. And one thing that absolutely has to be able to happen as part of these parklets is that, we're actually living it right now. If there was a huge amount of water, or that there was some reason that they need to be moved, the parklets, it continues to be important that the parklets have a little bit of the ability to have some mobility or mobility as we deal with emergencies and that kind of thing. I think the program spells that out pretty well. Again, not having one in place, I think I love the big thinking portion of it. And if we can help by getting people out eating and enjoying outside, yeah, I know the last couple of days have not been those eating out. You kind of melt, but overall, it seems to us, I mean, that's the reason why we looked at this, looked at kind of the idea that numbers that have been kicked around, and we thought that up to 9,000 with a 90/10 split was probably the best that we could do with the budgeted money that we have, and the fact that we have some really solid interest in the facade program as well, and the fact that it's sharing money. I'd hate to give it all away for one project when we can tackle 7 or 8, 9 projects.
Anyone else?
Madam Mayor, this is Vice Mayor Lingenfelter. I would have just a few questions, if I may.
Go ahead.
My question would be to either Manager Foggin or to staff. When coming up with this policy, and specifically the cap, did they reach out to local contractors to learn about probable construction costs, per square foot costs?
when we originally looked at when we originally did the parklets, pedlets plan, that was something that Gary and his team had considered. The thought was that, that's where we got to the 5,000 originally, is that a parklet would run a business about $10,000, or between $10,000 and $15,000, depending on what materials they used. Gary, I know Gary's on the Zoom meeting. Am I recalling those numbers correctly, Gary? Sylvia?
That's correct. We did look at those. That was certainly was pre-COVID.
So you did reach out to local contractors to get cost per square foot? There may be a delay. I didn't hear.
We looked at cost. We didn't hit the contract. What we looked at, certainly on pre-COVID, was what could we afford at the time based on the old budget. So, and then when this other money became, or city manager Fogg made it available to us, then what we did then, I am getting delayed, was take a look and say, well, what could we do to enhance it? And so that was to bring it up to the 90-10. So
I appreciate the split. I think it's a good split. Today, I don't know if any of you know Kevin Morgan. He owns Axiom Construction. They're another local contractor in Kingman. They're not the largest, but they're a pretty good sized company. I think Axiom Construction actually did the terminal renovation. Isn't that right, Gary? So Kevin's a good guy. Kevin's a good guy. And I asked him, and I reached out to say, what are today's costs for something like this per square foot? Just a rough order of magnitude. What are we looking at to make this successful? Something that's nice, something that's going to lend positively to the streetscape, something that's going to last. And he said that there was just a similar project in Bullhead City where they had a 10-foot by 28-foot similar pad that was publicly bid, so 280 square foot. And he said the bids came in at, I believe he said 10,500, one at 12,000, one at 19,400, and then one at $25,000 for that little 280 square foot. That's a huge cost range, obviously, so I don't know exactly what the specifications for that were. But if you look at some sort of a range, that gives you a range of maybe $35 to $87 a square foot. And if you got a $9,000 cap, that gets you maybe a 100 square foot pad or a 200 square foot pad outside. Not a whole lot of room to socially distance anybody outside. And I thought the goal of the program was really to replace some of the 50% indoor seating that our local restaurants have lost due to the COVID response and the executive orders and all this. And not only that, we were talking about these before COVID as a good way to increase traffic, increase sales downtown. I envision that these would be used all year round if they're properly done and they look nice. I know that the city is doing a design concept for the whole streetscape, but for the general funded improvements and beautification stuff, we don't have a funding source dedicated or identified for those improvements. So those parklets could be the only thing that really happens for a while. I don't know. It depends on what future councils do. So I think that if we're realistic and we go on what actual construction costs are right now, as far as a range per square foot, we want them to look nice and we want them to be something that everybody can be proud of, that we have to look at some sort of a higher cap. I think the cost sharing is fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Mayor, can I jump in?
I don't have Mr. Thompson's email in front of me, but if I recall it, he was estimating $20 to $50 a square foot. And I looked at that and split it down the middle because I just did. And his range of footage was 25 to 75 linear feet by 18. Anyway, if you go with the 25 by 18 at 35, it's about a $15,000 project. But if you go to 75, well, you're up to 45,000, which I think is what he was talking about. I think the nature of the parklet or pedlet will determine whether it's a $12,000 project or a $45,000 project. In the city, as a city, we have been working with these small businesses to expand outside, even if it's just blocking off. Is that right, Manager Foggin?
That is correct.
So from the get-go, we have made that commitment to the downtown businesses that we are going to work with them to expand, recognizing the need to have more capacity given the internal loss. So it becomes a matter to me, going back to Councilor Staley, of understanding, because I don't at this point know what the projects really look like. If you're building a permanent installation out there with all the accoutrements as described, which would be lovely, but is it flexible? Can it be torn down? We haven't fixed the infrastructure downtown, so we might have to have everything moved quickly. And so, all those things come to my mind. I too am very happy that we're changing the split to 90-10. I think that is the appropriate direction. But I'm the only way to make, I don't know, kind of ask this Manager Foggin, but in my mind, the only way to really increase the amount available would be to go back to a revision of the budget and actually allocate, have a budget revision in order to allocate more money to these projects. Is that true, Mr. Foggin?
Yeah, the way the program currently stands, it's first come, first serve, up to $90,000 worth of funding. And that's what's set out in the budget.
So there are a couple of things that come to my mind, and one is back to, this is still a pilot. We need to get at least one done and see kind of how it's supposed to work anyway, or at least get a design that we understand what the costs associated with it are. But the other thing is, because of the COVID pandemic, Manager Foggin and I have discussed, and I think he's already told the council previously in some email, that because of the uncertainty of the revenue coming into the city in the first quarter, which we're in, at the end of the quarter, we will be taking a look at the budget during the second quarter to look back at the first quarter and see where we're at, because we don't really have a precedent yet to know how the budget will work. And at that time, it seems like if there are revisions or needed in either direction, that might be a more appropriate time to think of a budget revision or amendment. I hope I'm not misquoting you, Mr. Foggin, but we have discussed it, and I really think that we need to get that revenue and know more where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, as far as where the budget is, at least what it started July 1st with, what kind of flexibilities we have to direct more funds into this program. I'd have to sit down and have a deeper conversation with Ms. Moline on that, and our finance director would definitely be able to provide some more insight into that. And if, like I said, right now the program shares $90,000 between the facade and the parklets. If there's a desire to do more for parklets, we really have to see where the facades, the people that have applied for facade grants, and just to see how much additional money there is in the program or to see if there's additional money to put towards the program in upcoming months. So, yeah, that's kind of where we are.
Mayor, may I say something?
Yes, Councilor Nelson.
As a business owner, someone who literally is trying to live this COVID insanity just like everyone else out there and every other business owner in this country right now, we can't look at our citizens and ask them to pay for more than $9,000 per parklet. I mean, I think that's a pretty decent chunk right there. If you want it, you're a business owner. You gotta pay for some of that on your own. And I'm sorry if it's $45,000. I apologize, but that's life. That's part of what happens as a business owner, and those are decisions you have to make as a business owner. We are already really, really working very hard to try and help our downtown businesses. We aren't doing this anywhere else. We're not offering anybody else in town this. So no, I'm not, I just don't support going any higher than 9,000. I don't support changing our budget. And that's where it sits. It's where it should sit for our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Could I jump in here real fast?
Yes, Mr. Cooper.
Sure. I just wanted to make sure that we're all aware that Arizona, as everybody hates it when I talk about this, Arizona has a gift clause provision in its constitution about subsidizing private individuals or businesses. And what we need to do is we just need to be cognizant that when you're giving, as Councilwoman Nelson was noting, when you're giving a private business funds, there needs to be a proportional benefit for it. And that's where we have to be careful about how far we escalate this program. Currently, we're already allowing them to occupy the city's right of way at no cost. I've noticed some other cities, when they do this program, either charge a lease or a percentage of their proceeds. In addition, we're financing an architect as well. So I think as we talk about increasing, we're talking about increasing that risk of impacting the gift clause.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Yes,
Very
ma'am.
relevant. Any other comments?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to talk about a couple of things. As another business owner as well, my business was not affected, and most businesses weren't affected by one of the executive orders that were handed down by the governor. Our restaurants were. Our restaurants were limited to 50% seating. So the businesses didn't ask for that to be placed upon them, that burden. And many of them, as we all know, are very, very close to losing everything, which in my opinion is kind of almost like an eminent domain taking, where if you have somebody that's they've poured everything that they have into their restaurant and the governor shuts you down and you can't open and you can't make a living and it's lost forever. Well, are they going to be able to get compensated for that? Probably not. And that's very sad to me. So they're disproportionately affected by this pandemic. And I think that since we are giving them the architect, and since the city would be fronting the majority of the costs, that the city holds all of the approvals for what is designed, sure that it would be designed in sections, making sure that it allows for proper drainage in the culverts that exist, things like this. It doesn't sound like it's going to pass, but I think that if this is a tool that some of our restaurants that are locally owned could use to survive, that's a good thing. And I think the gift clause says you simply have to do an analysis to show that the public benefit over the long term is going to be greater than what the investment from the public entity would be. We ran into that in economic development several times, and we still will. That's why we had to do the economic development analysis on Kingman Crossing, to show that the public benefit is more. And the same would ring true here. So I think that this is something worth exploring, to continue to explore, because I think that if a lot of our local restaurants go out of business downtown, our city is going to be poor for it. That's my personal opinion. Thank you.
You're muted, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, Carl. Any other comments? Okay, at this time, I think the only decision at this time is whether to move forward with this revision, because we couldn't certainly ask the city manager to look into additional financing if the council desires that. I personally think it's premature until we have a better feel on our revenue streams. And the other thing that Councilor Nelson's point was a good one. Right now, the facade program, that's open to anyone in the city, I understand. But this Parklet Padlet is limited to downtown. And for good cause. We really need the downtown to be vital and vibrant. But going back to the fact that I think we're not ready to know what that increase could be, should be, or even what it is really going to cost at this point. I would like to see us move forward with the revision.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Just an option, just to make sure that we've covered all the bases, and I just want to make sure that that we put out there that if there's a little bit of I'll say questions regarding this, or we haven't answered or provided enough information on this, we're definitely willing to have you table it, and we're more than willing to have it come back at the next council meeting with having looked at kind of what, if there's options that we've missed, or some opportunity to put some additional money into it, or what's committed already for the facade grants. If that's a concern, I just want to make sure that the council and knows that if there's a desire to look at having this be a little bit higher, or the percentages changed, we stand ready and able to do and react in any way that you would like us to move. So just want to make sure that was out there.
City Manager Foggin, we make with Sylvia that, do we have anything in the queue as far as the facade grants that we would affect by delaying this?
We have 6, and now I just realized I actually had a student that have applied for facade grant. The one thing I do know is that the businesses I spoke with today, regardless if we table it or approve tonight, is that they're sounding like they do need an option to expand their occupancy. Sooner would be better than later. Otherwise, that's what we have, Gary. We have about 7 facade, and I don't know how much they're going to ask me, but if I estimate if they were going to use their maximum, if they were 9,000, then it would be 63,000. But I don't have what they're submitting at this time yet.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Councilor Staley.
I kind of had a feeling that sooner rather than later would be more beneficial, just as Sylvia just clarified for us. As 2 weeks makes a big difference if you can expand your restaurant or not. I also think that the $9,000 is a very generous grant, and especially since we haven't even seen one of these be built yet, or know how successful it will be. So I would like to just make a motion that we approve this as it is on the budget, with a $9,000 max and a 90-10 match.
Thank you, Councilor. We have a motion to approve the Parklet Padlet program revision as it is stated. Is there a second?
I'll
Mayor,
second.
Wait a minute. Is there a second? Was that Counselor Nelson?
And Counselor Wade. Oh.
And Counselor Nelson.
Annie, I think I heard there's a motion and a second. So is there any further discussion?
Madam Mayor, I'd have one question for Attorney Cooper. All of the facade grant disbursements, are all of those subject to a gift clause analysis as well to determine the public benefit?
You don't, yes, but you don't have to necessarily do a complete analysis to try and get everything to survive the whole process. When we're looking at this program right here, it's like I say, if we start expanding it and getting challenges from other businesses, yeah, I would have some concern. But this is still fairly small. It's still a fairly pilot program, and you're looking at a small dollar amount. So I don't think you necessarily have to go and hire an outside consultant. It's something that we've done internally, or we can do internally, noting that there's a benefit that we're getting to the community based on these programs. So if you're looking at, we're only giving, $1,000, $2,000 here, I don't see as big of a concern. It's when you start expanding that program a lot higher, or taking on a larger percentage of the project where you're just outright gifting the entire project to that private individual.
Sure. So there's going to be an internal gift clause analysis with each one of these. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the city can make a determination on this program itself.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, Vice Mayor?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
I think this whole council, we're aware that that the COVID has had an extraordinary impact on restaurants and gyms and bars and others, but especially on those that have been subject to the specific executive orders. And I do want to thank the staff for working with the businesses and with the chamber to do what we can do to assist their survival or their navigation of this crisis. And this discussion will be going on, I think, because helping our city, all of the businesses and our people come back stronger, at least come back strong, is in all of our minds. So I don't think this discussion is over. And from my point of view, we need to move and get the split changed and get the amount changed so that we have at least made progress toward helping these businesses. So that's my thought. If there are no other comments, we have a motion and a second to approve the revisions to the Parklet Peddler program. And I think we'll probably have to have a roll call vote.
Mayor Miles,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Lingenfelter,
I love the program, but I don't think it's going to be enough for anybody to use it. So no.
Councilmember Mello Keener,
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson,
Aye.
Councilmember Scott Staley,
Aye.
Councilmember Watkins,
Yes.
and Councilmember Wade.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. New business, consideration of resolution number 5288, approving a minor amendment to the Kingman General Plan 2030, changing the projected land use of certain property from commercial to high-density residential. Civil Works Engineering LLC applicant and Canyon State Enterprises LLC property owner have requested a minor amendment to the Kingman General Plan 2030 to change the projected land use of certain property from community commercial to high-density residential, 17 to 28 dwelling units per acre. The City of Kingman Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on July 14th, 2020, and recommended the approval of the minor general plan amendment as requested by a vote of 601. Staff recommends approval. Manager Foggen.
Thank you, Mayor. For items A, B, and C, Chris Young and his team are going to cover all three of these items, so I'll turn it over to them.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Hopefully you can see my screen and hear me okay?
Yes.
Great.
See
This is a minor general plan amendment, and I'm sorry, this is actually the wrong item.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Let me escape. I apologize. We pulled up the wrong case number, it looks like. Just give me a moment here. I don't see it. Okay. All right. Hopefully you can see this okay now.
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. This is a minor general plan amendment to change the projected land use for a certain property from community commercial to high density residential. The applicants in this case are Civil Works Engineering is the applicant, and the property owner is Canyon State Enterprises. The property in question is located on Rutherford Street between Airway Avenue and Calumet Avenue. And again, the change would change the projected land use from community commercial to high density residential 17 to 28 dwelling units per acre. If approved, this will facilitate a concurrent request to rezone the property, which is covered in the case that follows this one. This is the location of the site, again, on the east side of Rutherford Street, just south of Airway Avenue. Surrounding uses, there is a warehouse and some retail to the north of the site, an ambulance service to the northwest. Property directly to the west is vacant currently. To the southwest is the Rutherford Village single family and multiple family area with duplexes and triplexes. Directly to the south is a contractor's office. There's also quite a bit of vacant property to the south and southwest. And toward the southeast, there's a truck repair facility, and directly east is an RV park. There's a couple of slides showing the site. This is taken from the northeast corner of the site, looking toward the, the northwest corner of the site, looking toward the east. This is at the southwest corner of the site, looking southward on Rutherford Street. As mentioned, the site is currently designated as community commercial, and the requested change would change it to high density residential. You can see there are other high density residential designated areas adjacent to the site. This slide shows the current zoning in the area, surrounded by mostly C3, but there is R4 zoning directly to the west across from Rutherford Street, and that is ultimately the requested zoning for the property as well. Close-up of the site showing utilities in the area. There is 8-inch water and sewer on both sides of the property, to the west and to the east, in Rutherford Street and Swing Street. There's also a sewer line on the site, as well as a water line on the site, which serves a business on Airway Avenue. So the site consists of 2 parcels, approximately 19 acres in size. Currently it's zone C3. It was annexed in the city in 1971 and zoned O, recreational open space. There was a change in the general plan, the previous general plan 2020 in 2007, in which the designation was changed from the high density residential designation to community commercial. So this would be bringing it back to what was previously designated prior to 2007. Property is generally flat. It's located in a flood zone X, which is basically the area of the 500 flood area. It does have access to water and sewer as mentioned. It has access to 2 rights of way, Rutherford Street and Swing Street, both have 60-foot wide rights of way. Rutherford is fully improved to the south of the property. However, directly adjacent to it, it has recycled asphalt pavement and no other improvements. And Swing Street is not currently improved. We posted the site on 2 occasions for both the P&Z Commission as well as the council meeting. We published notices in the paper as well, sent notices to the surrounding property owners, and we have received no comments from the public as of this point. There were no objections from any departments or agencies. There were some comments primarily from engineering, and that would be addressed more as part of the concurrent rezoning request. So I'll go over those when we get to that part of the presentation. We did analysis of the request. We determined that it does meet the requirements for a minor general plan amendment. Whenever amendment is being considered, we have to consider a couple of items. One is that the amendment is consistent with the policies and objectives of the rest of the general plan. And B, that the proposed amendment furthers the public health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of Kingman. Chapter 1, goals and objectives of the general plan, contains several objectives and policies within the various elements. Land use element contains objective 3, which states that it encourages a compatible mix of land uses, which allows accessibility to goods and services without extensive travel. Objective 3 within the growth area element encourages a planned mixture of land uses that provides for choice of transportation modes, which reduces the automobile dependency, provides for needed public open space, and creates a sense of place. And policy 3.1 states that a mixture of housing types, densities, prices, rents, and designs should be provided throughout the neighborhood planning areas, with higher density areas near the improved collector streets and close to commercial and public service areas. Also, there's a statement in the land use element about residential land uses, and it states basically that the density of the housing is always a fundamental design or decision in city design, and public costs of services and private development costs are transferred to the end user. And those are closely linked to residential densities. So density provides a benchmark from which the amount and type of public services that must be furnished can be measured. So whenever we're amending the land use map, we have to also make additional finding that the proposed change will be compatible with other land uses existing or planned in the area. This will be an infill site centrally located in Kingman, within a mile of major shopping areas along Stockton Hill Road. It'll be within a half mile of Centennial Park and Pool, the Academy Schools, the library, Department of Economic Services, and 3 CART bus stops. So it certainly meets the bill of being near city services and retail areas of the city. Also, higher density residential development along Collector Street is encouraged, which Rutherford would serve as that Collector Street, and it encourages a mix of land uses, which allows accessibility to nearby commercial and public services without extensive travel. Again, it's near these other uses. And also immediately adjacent to the area, there are other areas designated for high density residential. We have apartment complexes in the area as well as Rutherford Village, which is developed subdivision with similar lots as what would be proposed in this development, with duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. So it would be compatible with the surrounding area. So based upon the report, the findings of the report, the Planning Zoning Commission voted 6-0 with 1 abstention to recommend approval of the request to change the land use designation from community commercial to high density residential 17 to 28 dwelling units per acre. That is reflected in resolution 5288, and staff recommends approval. And I'd be happy to answer any questions they have at this time.
Are there any questions from council?
Madam Mayor, I just have a quick question.
Councilor White?
Thank you. I guess to preface this question, I just wanted to say that generally my default is to allow people to use their own property the way they see fit, as it is their land, absent compelling public interest or safety issues. And with that said, Manager Foggin, you have mentioned in the past that mixed use property or projects like this that contain different types of zoning in its general vicinity can be financially beneficial to that property and the surrounding properties. So I guess my question is, from the city's perspective, if this area were to be developed as its proposed rezoning, would the development have a negative financial impact on the surrounding zones or areas?
So was that question to me, Counselor, or did you want Rich to answer that?
Either one. I'm sure either one of you could answer that.
Yeah, so I would say based on the zoning that surrounds this property, you always, I'll say this, is we always hate to see commercial property go away. But as Rich has pointed out in the presentation, this seems to be a pretty good fit. If you're not going to have community commercial on this lot, the high density residential does make a good neighbor to the surrounding properties. Obviously for the city of Kingman, commercial properties are always going to be more valuable because our hope is that will generate additional sales tax. But based on where this property is located, I would say that it's actually a pretty nice fit. And not sure that general or community commercial would actually be successful on this lot anyway, or in this area. So that's what I would call it.
Okay, thank you. That I kind of assumed that's how you were going to respond, so I appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilor Watkins.
Rich, can you clarify? Well, of course, these next 3 resolutions are all tied together with this property, are they not?
This resolution and the ordinance that follows are tied together. The ordinance that follows that one is a separate item.
Okay. Oh, yeah, it is. I'm sorry, it is. Okay, question. As you go up Rutherford, and of course, where that ambulance service is at, you see that only half of their side of the road is paved with sidewalk. As this whole chunk of land develops there in between Rutherford and Swing Street, how is that, who's going to pay for the improvements? That section by the ambulance service, for example, and then on up to Swing Street to access Airway. Are they going to want to, I would think they would want to access Swing Street also. So that means improving that street all the way to there.
It would. This is touched on a little bit more during the rezoning case that follows, but Swing Street, for example, is a city right of way, but it is not currently a maintained street. So the street policy now states that not only would the property owner, when they develop the site, be responsible for improving their portion of Swing Street plus 8 feet, they would be responsible for extending those improvements all the way to the nearest paved roadway, which I believe in this case would be Airway Avenue.
So we would basically have one half of the street improved and the other half not.
For Swing Street, that's correct. And
For
also
Spring
also
Street, for
Rutherford
example.
Street as well. Mhm.
And also on Rutherford too. And is there something we can do about that where, I don't know. It just, you see where I'm going with this. So.
Yes, we actually are in the process of reviewing it's still preliminary, but there is a developer who's looking at the property directly across the street on Rutherford Street.
Yes.
And they would be responsible for improving their half of the street. So if that project goes forward, then both halves of that portion of the street would be improved. It'd be no cost to the city, although we would accept those improvements once completed for maintenance.
Okay. So we would still have that section, that other half across from the ambulance service up to where the utility company property stops. So that whole section there would be unpaved. I mean, it just, this is a great idea. I mean, to develop this land, I like it. But we also need to, so it makes our city look better and more professional as opposed to having half paved streets. So anyway.
Thank you, Councilor Watkins. I think you've hit on something that bothers many of us is development on when in the past development has been allowed on without street improvements or even without streets at all, just dirt. And that has happened in our city. And this is what comes from that. So, but at this time, I think we're just going to focus on this parcel. I will say that given the high density residential for 19 acres, that's a lot of units. And I'm glad that Centennial Park and some of these open areas are within a half a mile, because I think this is another example of where when we put a lot of people together in these units, we need to always think about where are they going to recreate and what access do they have to some kind of, outdoor areas. And I think that's something that I hope this council will, as we move forward, build into our thinking and our requirements. But it is close to the parks and the schools, and so I'm comfortable going in this direction for this parcel. Are there any other comments for Rich or for Ron? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve resolution number 5288.
Mayor, I'd like to move that we approve resolution 5288.
Thank you, Councilor. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Was that Vice Mayor? Okay, Vice Mayor seconded. So we have a motion and a second to approve resolution 5288 and the minor amendment to the Kingman General Plan 2030, changing the projected land use of certain property from community commercial to high density resolution. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. Item B, consideration of ordinance number 1908, rezoning certain property from C3 commercial service business to R4 residential multiple family high density. Civil Works Engineering LLC applicant and Canyon State Enterprises LLC property owner have requested the rezoning from C3 commercial service business to R4 residential multiple family high density. The City of Kingman Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on July 14th, 2020, and recommended the approval of the rezoning by a vote of 601 with certain conditions. Staff recommends approval. Manager Fogden, do you want this to go to Rich? Okay, Mr. Ruggles.
I think we got the right one up now. Okay, this is rezoning case RZ 20-006. And it's a request to rezone from C3 to R4. Again, the applicants and property owners are Civil Works Engineering and Canyon State Enterprises property owner. And this is the companion case with the minor general plan amendment you just reviewed. And I won't go through each of these slides since you've already seen them. I'm gonna kind of skip ahead a little bit here. Start with the comments from the departments and agencies. Starting with engineering, they did comment that MUC will need to approve water service. That's because these are unsubdivided parcels. And we touched on, we talked a little bit about the street improvement situation. So street improvements will be required in Rutherford Street and Swing Street at the time of development. Rutherford needs improvements across the full frontage of the parcel, and Swing Street would need to have improvements that would extend to the nearest paved roadway, not only just in front of their property, but all the way to the nearest roadway, which I believe would be Airway Avenue in this case. Any new driveways would also have to be situated and located in accordance with our street policy. Drainage development will have to accommodate all offset site drainage entering the site. And they'll have to provide for retention and detention for the increase in impervious surfaces that would be created by the development of the site in accordance with our master drainage plan and design administrative manual. Also, any fire hydrants that are placed on the site will have to meet the maximum distance requirement of 500 feet. Unisource made a comment that easements would be required outside the platted roads once this is subdivided. We'll certainly follow up when that occurs. So whenever we consider rezoning of a piece of property in Kingman, there's a number of things to consider for the P&Z Commission as well as the council to consider. First one would be whether there's a demonstrated need for the uses that are permitted in the proposed zoning district. In the last 9 years, from the 2010 census to last July, Kingman saw approximately 3,000 new residents growth. That's a 10% growth rate total, or a little over 1% annually. This growth does create a demand for new housing units, estimated about 1,168 units based upon the 2010 census estimate of just over 2.5 persons per household. So currently we only have about 19 acres of land in the city that's zoned R4, which is basically the property across the street from this site. This is the highest density residential zone in Kingman, which allows up to 28 units per acre. We do have a lot of housing in Kingman, but we don't have that much diversity. So we need to not rely solely on single family residential units on large lots. The R4 zone does allow for a variety of residential land use types. Next, we look at the suitability of the proposed zoning district and the compatibility with the surrounding area and the community at large. The change in zoning would allow for smaller lot sizes than would be presently allowed in C3. You could do multiple family in C3, but you have to do them on minimum of 7,500 square foot lots. R4 does allow lots of small 6,000 square feet. Both the C3 and R4 zones would allow up to 28 units per acre, but they intend to subdivide the property with lots ranging between 48 lots ranging between 6,000 and just under 7,500 square feet, and 32 lots that would be 7,500 square feet or more. For a total of 192 units on the entire property, or about 20 units per acre. As I mentioned, the R4 zone would allow higher density than that. This would be a little bit lower. There are several nearby apartment complexes that are at this density or higher. Rutherford Village to the southwest has a mix of duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, similar to what would be proposed in this development. So overall, it appears that it would be compatible with what's in the immediate area. Would be compatible with also with the general plan as amended. And this is a conceptual layout of the plan showing there would be roads connecting to both Rutherford Street and Swing Street with internal streets. And lots, as I mentioned, total of 80 lots, 48 lots, less than 7,500 square feet, and 32 lots that would be greater than 7,500 square feet. So the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 6-0 with one abstention to recommend approval of the rezoning from C3 to R4 with the following conditions that would be addressed at the time of development. Condition 1 would be water service requests would need to be submitted to MUC for review to be authorized by the City Council. 2, all perimeter streets and new driveways will be constructed with current adopted standards at the time of development after review by the Traffic Safety Committee. 3, proposed development shall accommodate all off-site drainage entering the site and provide retention and detention for the increased impervious surfaces in accordance with our master drainage plan. So these conditions are incorporated into ordinance number 1908, and staff is recommending approval. And that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Rich. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Ruggles from the council?
Mayor, I have a quick one.
Councilor Nelson.
Going back with Ken's question, is there any way we can actually ask them to go on ahead and pave all of that, take care of all of the streetscaping, and then turn around and have the other I don't know, developers or anybody else out there that could reimburse as they move in? I just don't like the idea of one more half street in Kingman or one more dirt road going down the middle of Kingman. I mean, is there some way we can work with them on that, Rich?
Councilmember Nelson, yes, there is within our street policy, there is the ability of the City Council to pass an ordinance requiring any particular street to be improved under certain conditions. I probably would recommend it being a separate ordinance, separate from this one, since this is related to zoning, but the council does have that ability to do that under our street policy.
Well, I have a follow-up question. Under that policy, would the property owners that are on either side of that undeveloped street cover the cost of that development?
Yeah,
I don't know. Of the street improvement, I should say.
I'm sorry, I'd have to look at the exact wording of the policy. I don't have it right in front of me right now as to how exactly what the council can require of the adjoining owners.
Because this is, I wasn't aware that we could do that. And there are streets that have been developed and that, well, I'm aware of improvement districts and things of that nature, but I would like further information on what you're discussing and with the policy.
And generally the way it works is the adjoining property owner who would be adjacent to the street would be responsible for improving their portion at the time of development.
Right.
So you'd be talking about having another owner be responsible for that portion. So I'd have to look at it a little more carefully to see exactly if we could do that.
I think that would be a good thing to look at that, because there may be times like this when we could implement something like that if it makes sense and if it's possible. So if you could bring that back to council separately.
Mayor, just to jump in real fast.
Yes.
The staff is already working on this issue with, obviously under the city manager's direction. So we've already met on this, and we'll be bringing something to council hopefully before too long. So
You've met on
the
what?
concern about the half street improvements and how to expand that.
Okay, is that just that's for any half street? I take it. The policy would apply beyond this particular one.
Yeah, we're talking about a citywide policy to work.
As a citywide policy. Well, I think that would be excellent. And also for streets that are whole streets with no development on them. I mean, with development on them, but no street improvement.
That's another question.
That is another question. So if you could look into that too, but thank you for letting us know that. Okay, is there any other questions or comments on item B? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve resolution or ordinance number 1908, rezoning certain property from C3 commercial service business to R4 residential multiple family high density.
Mayor, I will make a motion to approve ordinance number 1908.
Thank you, Councilor Staley. Is there a second?
I second it.
Councilor Watkins, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve item B, ordinance number 1908. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. No opposition. Motion carries unanimously. Item C, consideration of ordinance number 1907, a rezoning of certain property from R18 residential single family and RR rural residential to R16 residential single family. A request from Kingman Land Holding applicant and property owner, Traven Pennington, as contact to rezone certain property from R18 residential single family and RR rural residential to R16 residential single family. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on July 14th, 2020. The commission voted 7-0 to recommend approval of the rezoning request. Staff recommends approval. Mr. Ruggles.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, this is Gary Likeness with the Community Development Department. I'm here to present the rezoning case request. The request is to have two parcels go from rural residential RR zone and R18 single family residential to the R16 residential single family district. The applicant and property owner is Kingman Land Holding, and the owner's representative is Traven Pennington. The requested action has been stated. The location of the parcels are, you go up Stockton Hill Road quite a ways, up to where East Grace Mill Parkway would be. And that would be just north of Mojave County Community College. I think I said that right. And so you can see the boundaries in red there with the star in the middle. That is the subject property. And it's just north of the Eagle View subdivision that you can see platted there.
The current zoning for the property is up in the upper left area in the lighter shade. That's the rural residential RR zone. And then the remainder of the property is zoned R18, single family, which the existing Eagle View subdivision is zoned R18. The requested rezone is to go to R16, 6,000 square foot lot minimums. And that would be consistent with what is zoned to the east. This is just an aerial with some utility information shown. That the services are available in the area. The general plan map shows this area to be designated as medium density residential, which allows 3 to 8 dwelling units per acre. And that would be, just to note, that same color you can see there. I'm not sure what color that is, peach or something. The existing Eagle View subdivision, this subject property, and all of the property to the east has that same designation in our general plan. The property size is approximately almost 75 acres, with the existing zoning. 56 acres is currently zoned R18, and about 18 acres is currently zoned R rural residential. And both parcels are currently undeveloped. The property was annexed in December of 2002, and it was initially zoned rural residential. And later in 2005, as part of the Eagle View preliminary plat, this property, a portion of it was rezoned to R18, with the remainder as RR. These were originally phase C and D of the Eagle View preliminary plat, but this preliminary plat has since expired. So any new development would require a new subdivision. The public utilities, I showed that they're in the area, service the area, but the engineering department noted that the sanitary sewer is at or near capacity, and that downstream improvements to the system may be necessary. And water for the site is served by 1 feed, and the water service will need to be approved by the Municipal Utilities Commission. And you may have noticed on the zoning map, the area currently zoned RR has a weird boundary as it combines with the R18. And part of that has to do with topography and the fact that the western part of that property, due to elevation, might have some problems with water service. An additional looping of the system may be necessary. Transportation to the site is accessed from Grace Neal Boulevard, or I think that's actually Parkway, and East View Road that runs north and south into the property. East Grace Neal is 100 feet of right-of-way with improvements at approximately 59 feet or 60 feet. East View Road is about 65 feet of right-of-way with improvements at about 55 feet. The public notification for this case was done per our legal guidance in the code. We have received no public comment to this point. We have agency comments that these comments are also put into the proposed ordinance as conditions of approval. The first comment is from Unisource Energy, and that is that they need for subdivision purposes, they'll need a 5-foot easement along all portions of the lots that are against platted roads. The city engineering has provided comments, and these again are going to be conditions in the proposed ordinance. And these comments are regarding water service in the area, sanitary sewer in the area, street improvements, and drainage for the site. And these are all included also the further in depth in your commission report to council that has been provided in your packet. The analysis for the need requires us to demonstrate a need for the uses permitted in the zoning district of R16. And that's an error there. It should say R16 district will accommodate the continued population growth of the city. And Rich mentioned this in his previous case, that we've had some growth that's been demonstrated in been shown in the census numbers. We've grown approximately in 10 years, or 9 years, almost 10, almost 3,000 residents, 10% increase. Also, part of the analysis is the suitability of the proposed zoning district and compatibility. The surrounding land is mostly vacant with some residential and the Mojave Community College to the south. The R16 district maintains provisions regarding height limits, setbacks, lot coverage, things to increase compatibility with surrounding properties, and then also limits the residential density to just under 8 dwelling units per acre. And as I mentioned earlier on, the property to the east is also zoned R16, so this would not be in a spot zone or anything. This would be a transition over from the property to the east to other property to the west. The general plan designates the two properties, as mentioned, as medium density residential, which does allow for the densities and the classification of the R16 district. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed the proposal and has recommended approval of this rezoning case, and they have done so with proposed conditions of approval. And the conditions of approval are listed here, but they're also incorporated in the ordinance 1907 that's being proposed tonight. And with that, I would stand for questions at this point.
I would ask council if you have any questions or comments.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Watkins.
I know we have been trying to do some neighborhood parks, like the one by Wallach Ranch, the one up on Southern. Are there any plans for this subdivision, since it's adjacent to that other one, for any kind of park, some common space or recreation space in the area?
Good question.
That has not been relayed to us as part of this proposal, but that certainly would come up during the time of subdivision consideration.
Okay, so this is the first step then?
Correct.
Okay, so that can be handled later on?
Correct.
Okay.
And I think that, again, as I mentioned, I think as a council, we want to make sure that we have these subdivision requirements that take that into consideration, the open space and park availability, especially on something this large. Let's see, I think I had a question about the rural residential areas going to R16. Are those the areas that it's suspected that there could be issues with water delivery and sewer?
That's correct.
And that's why they were zoned R in the beginning, to allow perhaps for a septic system or something? Pardon?
Yeah, at the time of the subdivision approval, they decided to leave that portion as RR due to the water issues there.
And so when the MUC goes to approve water service, will that have to include some type of accommodations or plans that for improvements that will ensure an adequate water supply?
I'm not sure on the process of the MUC procedures. Maybe Rich, do you know on that? Would you have advice?
I would say, I don't know if Greg's on the line here, but he might be able to jump in.
could defer that to Greg Henry, city
Good evening.
engineer.
Hello. Yes, so as part of the process of creating the subdivision and going through the utility commission, they have to demonstrate that there's sufficient capacity and sufficient pressure for both the water and, well, pressure for the water, capacity for the sewer. The issue with sewer capacity is this subdivision and many of the other subdivisions north of Jagerson all feed into one single sewer line, and it's already known to have some capacity issues. So the more that connect, the greater those capacity issues will become. So they have to demonstrate that the sewage that they would provide to the city in a system, that the system is capable of providing that. And if they needed to upsize a line, they would have to upsize the line. Typically, that's what MUC would review and make a recommendation to council on.
Okay. So the demonstration means potentially improvements to the water and sewer systems to accommodate the additional.
That's
input.
correct.
Okay.
Mayor Miles, I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Councilor Nelson.
Greg, the question I have is, there's not a chance that we have any septic systems that can go in on this, correct?
No, they would have to ask for special council approval to put any septic systems in.
Okay, thank you.
All new subdivisions would have to be on sewer according to the current policy.
Very, very good. Very good. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, and I think that has to be the expectation as we move forward, because knowing this in advance and knowing that originally it was zoned RR for that reason, that it's not going to be necessarily easy, but it's got to be built into whatever demonstration or improvements are needed. Okay, that's all my comments. Are there any other comments? If not, I will entertain a motion to approve ordinance number 1907.
Madam Mayor, I motion that we approve this rezone.
Thank you,
Ordinance
Councilor
1907.
Watkins. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councilor Staley. We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 1907 and rezone certain property from R18 residential single family and RR rural residential to R16 residential single family. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? No opposition. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Council. Now we move on to department reports. The first one is Parks, Open Space, Trails, Recreation Master Plan Final Draft. Manager Fogg.
Thank you, Mayor. We are very excited to be having this as a discussion item. It is something that's been worked on now for quite some time with a lot of community input, which we are very happy about. And so what we have for you tonight is the Parks Master Plan. And so Mike has an introduction. And so I'll turn it over to Mike to walk us through the Parks Master Plan. So Mike.
I would like to start out by saying thank you to Mayor and Council for your support of this project, obviously, and for the funding and your participation in it as well. And I would like to say thank you to the Park Commission for their work on the project. And at a special meeting, July 15th, they voted to bring this to Council for approval. And so we're going to talk about it this evening, and then it will come back to you in September. I'd also like to recognize, like Ron said, the participation that we had was excellent. All the citizens that participated in the meetings and the survey, thank them for their thoughts and input on this. Special thank you to City Manager Fogg and the project team that worked on this, and also all of our Parks and Recreation
team members that did a lot of hard work on this project. And I'd like to just say that this plan has identified areas, best practices that we can improve on, areas that our department can improve on. And it's also shown many areas that our department, my employees and the team have done a great job in many areas. So it's been a really enlightening experience. And it also has identified areas where we need parks. It's identified facilities and amenities that our citizens want and areas that they think are important. I feel like this is a great document to guide our department into the future. With that, I would like to introduce Teresa Jackson of Greenplay. She's the primary person that did a lot of the work for Greenplay LLC on this project. And she did a great job on this, and I really appreciate it. So Teresa, I think you're there.
I'm here. Thank you, Mike. Well, good evening, Mayor, Council. I've met many of you when we were out there in January doing stakeholder interviews, and it's a pleasure to be here with you this evening to discuss this plan. Mike and his team have been fantastic to work with. They've been very open to ideas. They've provided just a tremendous amount of information and context so we could really understand the history of the department and really start to identify where you're at so we could start to develop a roadmap of where you can go in the future. So tonight, I don't have a presentation. I have a couple of things I'd like to highlight for you. And then our hope was that we could spend some time answering any questions you may have about the document. It's a large document, and so I could spend 2 hours going through it with you this evening, but we thought it would be best to really just address any questions that you may have. So the document is a result of 8 months of analysis, community engagement, site evaluations, and information gathering. The document, as I mentioned, should be a roadmap for the next 2 years. Some of our work included analysis on the department's finances, how it's organized, its program delivery, and its level of service. So recommendations in the plan are really driven by the results of a comprehensive community needs assessment we conducted. And Mike referenced that a moment ago. And we were just very pleased with the number of individuals that participated in your focus groups, as well as in the survey. And I'll go through some of those numbers. But that information really helps to guide these recommendations. We also take into account staff input and best practices that have been established by the National Recreation and Parks Association. And you'll see that throughout the document. So while the project was led by Greenplay, the project team did include J2 Landscape and Design, who did the level of service work, and RRC and Associates, who conducted the statistically valid survey. So in terms of the community needs assessment, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about the steps and some of what we learned, because that community engagement piece is so critical, especially when you're talking about parks and recreation, right? These are people who are really using your facilities and amenities every day. So to begin with, we conducted the stakeholder interviews. We also conducted 3 focus group meetings, which included a number of representatives from user groups of your parks and your facilities. And then we had a public input forum where that was just open to the public, a come one, come all type format. So we took that information and we developed a statistically valid survey. And basically what we're looking to do there is to test what we've heard from the public. Is what we've heard from, I think we had 108 participants while we were there. Is what we heard really representative of the greater community? So we developed that survey and we mailed it to 3,000 homes, and there was also an online link that was established. So with the mail-in, or what we term invite survey, we received 398 completed surveys back. And then with the open link, we had 215 surveys completed. So that is actually an excellent return. That leads to a 95% confidence level with just a 4.9% margin of error. So a lot of what we heard in the engagement was confirmed through the survey. So I just want to touch very briefly on a couple of items that rose to the top, because you will see them in the plan in a variety of ways. So first, we heard an indoor multi-use facility ranks high as a future priority. Over 70% of invite respondents agreed that Kingman needs an indoor facility. In the open-ended comments, several people pointed out that something is needed to escape the heat in the summer. Another priority for the communities that was identified is trails and pathways. Again, over 70% of respondents stated that trail connectivity was at least moderately important to their household. We also heard through engagement that there's a need for additional sports fields, and we heard this from staff as well. Scheduling is a challenge with the number of user groups that are jockeying for the fields. And then lastly, I wanted to hit on satisfaction. So in the survey, you're going to see that respondents rated the satisfaction excuse me. There was a high level of satisfaction for Parks and Rec in Kingman. All aspects rated by respondents received a 4.1 out of 5 or higher. And that is very high. And a member of your park commission did pose that question, hey, is this normal? Because I think the thinking was people are being nice in a survey and they're putting out high scores. But it is a rarity to see that level of satisfaction in a survey. So a pat on Mike's back and to the rest of his team. So earlier I mentioned the document should provide a roadmap for the department for the next 10 years. Beyond the recommendations that we provide, we really do try to provide a tangible actions that the city can put into place to implement the plan. So you'll see that towards the back of the document, there's an action plan that really drills down into the specific actions or objectives and prioritizes them. And we've tried to identify whether it's a short-term, midterm, or long-term goal. So short-term, we look at as within the next 3 years, midterm, 4 to 6 years, or long-term would be more of 7 to 10 years. So I realize I've only given you a glimpse of the process and what the document includes, but as I mentioned earlier, we thought it would be best to try to spend our time together addressing any questions you may have about the document. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to the Mayor Council for any questions or comments that I can hopefully address as we move towards adoption.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Are there any questions for Ms. Jackson from the council?
Madam Mayor, this is Vice Mayor Lingenfelter. I would have just a couple of questions. I'd like to pick her brain if I may.
Yes.
It looks like a great draft document. So I applaud everybody that's worked on this. This looks really great. My questions have to do with on page 123, you have a graph that shows financial choices and the survey results on financial choices. So one of the problems that Kingman has is we lack a dedicated revenue source or a general fund revenue source for parks. It's set us back for decades. That's why we don't have more amenities for the public to use. And it's interesting to me when you look at the things that were favored. The top things that were favored were naming rights and sponsorships for facilities. The second thing that was favored was public-private partnerships. And the last thing that was preferred was some sort of a bond referendum per project or a dedicated sales tax to go to parks projects. In your experience in the industry of parks, are there places in the country that you've seen successfully use public-private partnerships to construct facilities like a new community center or a new sports complex with fields, things like this?
Yes, it is becoming more and more common to see that occur. Boulder has had quite a bit of success with that, Boulder, Colorado. It's just identifying the right partner and the right project and really spelling out the terms of agreement so it's mutually beneficial. And it can be time consuming to identify that partner and to push a project forward. But it is an area that's really growing in the industry.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a follow-up to that, and you may or may not know the answer to it, but within some sort of a parks public-private partnership to do facilities like Boulder has had success with, what's sort of the funding mechanism or model look like? How does the private partner get repaid for their initial investment? Is there a place where we could look, or maybe some people we could reach out to pick their brain on that?
You know, maybe it would be good for me to send you an article that has some specific examples. I think I came across one a few months ago. But there's a lot of different ways the exchange can take place, whether it's land or it's a shared property. But I think if I pull an article and send it to the group, that can maybe spark some ideas of what might be feasible there in Kingman.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that immediately comes to my mind is maybe like user fees, but you want it to be as free or close to free as possible. So user fees or fees in a place like Kingman becomes problematic.
Right. And on your bond numbers, there was a pretty big variation between the open link and the invite. There was stronger support for the open link. That was at, I want to say over 50% for probably or definitely support. I want to say closer to 60%, which is a strong number. I think especially in a community that doesn't have a property tax already existing. So that might be a viable option with clearly identified projects. And from the experience of the focus group sessions that we conducted, there was a lot of passion behind what your Park and Rec department is doing. And I think if you could harness some of those individuals into supporting a campaign, you could be successful there.
Yeah. I know that the city has done some additional surveying regarding a dedicated sales tax with clearly described projects. And so that kind of jives with what you're telling me as well. So, okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? I have a question. It seems like when I was going through it, I liked how you use the national park standards and, you know, as a kind of a benchmark for where we are. And I agree, Kingman does a lot of things well in Parks and Rec. But I noticed on the acres of park for the per population unit, I forget, it's 1,000 people or something. Seems like we were like half the national park standard. Did I interpret that correctly? And if so, we have a ways to go on increasing the park, this open space and park availability to our citizens.
So I need to pull it up. I don't recall it being half, but you were under.
It was 4 point something acres, and the standard was 9 something. I don't have it in front of me.
I'm going to pull that page up, but to answer your question in short, you are under in the recommended acres. And within the document, we did a number of heat maps that show a 10-minute walk distance so that you could start to see where it would make sense to start building neighborhood parks to provide greater access. And in that map, you'll see that there's a large portion of East Kingman and North Kingman where there is a need for parks. And so that is one of the recommendations that is in the plan itself.
Appreciate that.
Mayor, you're muted.
You missed my compliment.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Your report was easy to read. It was very nicely done. And this kind of information really gives us guides. It will give us a guide, but also on the need for us to really pay more attention to this as we move forward and make sure that accessibility to our parks is throughout the city. So thank you. Any other comments? Well, I think this is a report, so we have no action. Thank you, Ms. Jackson, for presenting that, and excellent work.
Thank you. And, you know, at Green Play, we do like to say that our clients are clients for life, and we genuinely mean that. So a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, what have you ever have a question or you need something fine-tuned, we're here to support you and the needs of the community.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Mearsman. Well done. And team, I have that, and team. But back to Manager Foggin, the weed management update.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So Councilor Mello Keener had requested a short conversation about kind of weed management. There's, as you can imagine, this year has been kind of the perfect storm of everything happening, where we had a whole bunch of rain that encouraged plant growth that resulted in a large amount of weeds throughout the community. That, along with the pandemic that took away a lot of, all of our inmate labor that we've come to use and need to be able to tackle items like this. And then I know that we had Chris Young had addressed weeds earlier this year. I want to say in a March meeting, we made a video reminding citizens about what the requirements for their properties, the need to maintain their properties and keep them weed free. And what we run into, what Councilor Mello Keener had been received is some concerns that there are these areas in town that, for lack of a better terminology, or kind of look like or become no man land, with between basically fences and sidewalks, where the code calls out the need for property owners to maintain these properties, but the property owners do not have direct access to these properties. So I've asked Chief Rhodes and Chris Young to just take a minute to remind the council and the community of what the weed program looks like, kind of timing wise, of when someone gets a weed notification. And so I've asked, believe Chris Young is going to walk you through just a brief presentation reminding you of what he covered in March. So Chris, you ready?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Manager Foggin. Once again, good evening, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of council. As Manager Foggin mentioned, this is an update. If you recall, back on March 3rd, we did present our strategy for the 2020 weed management season and covered some of the highlights. So this will be a refresher and an update, as Manager Foggin mentioned.
Arrow key. There you go.
Told you. All right, I'm gonna have to scroll. So this is actually Article 4, Chapter 7, Section 7165 of the Kingman Municipal Code that manages public nuisances. Our weed management program is considered public nuisances. In the highlighted section, as Manager Foggin mentioned, the sidewalk or the public places that front or border the property seems to be most of our causing most of our challenges. Most of our proactive and our reactive weed enforcement cases do involve these portions of the right of way where people are just unaware that they're responsible to take care and maintain that portion. And if you recall back in March, we did show this example that was created as part of our public service announcement and our push out to the public. We did some videos, we did some public service announcements showing this particular graphic that delineates these right-of-way portions of the property of which the owners are responsible. We're going to take it a step further. We're in the midst of our website update, and we're going to include a dedicated page within that website just for weed management, highlight this graphic, and put some more informationals on there, and try to guide the public to more of this this information. So the management process currently, last year we did 85 total weed complaints, and we had an 85% compliance rate, which is considered pretty good. This year so far, we're up to 270 weed complaints, and with 80 still active. So we dropped a little bit in the compliance rate down to 70%, but we're managing a lot more complaints this year. The process is when we receive the complaint, we obviously investigate it within the same day, unless it comes in at the end of the day, and we confirm that it is indeed a complaint and a violation. We then send a notice of violations, and per statute and the Kingman Municipal Code, we're required to give the customer 30 days to abate the nuisance. If they fail to do that, we also have the option to post the property and also publish in the newspaper. That's if the certified letter comes back unclaimed or undeliverable. And that's just a dot the I, cross the T's for the court system. Because if there's still failed to abate after that 30-day notice, then we're going to process the notice of violation through the city attorney's office and hear that abatement in municipal court. So the total time frame is approximately 90 days per complaint. And last year we were averaging about 180 days. So we have reduced that time frame down about 30 days. Many of these right-of-way violations that involve along the sidewalk or an intersection do create what's known as a clear sight vision obstruction, and it could pose an imminent danger situation. In these instances, we do work with Jack Ploney's team to expedite that portion of the right-of-way to take care of that imminent danger potential, so that vehicles and or pedestrians that navigate within these intersections are less likely to be injured or less likely to have a crash. So Public Works has been great. They go out, they abate just the weeds at the right of way where vehicles can now safely enter and exit intersections along with pedestrians. And then we continue to enforce the remainder of the weeds with the customer. And here's an example of one that was received in June. This was at the corner of Riata Valley Road and Stockton Hill, that obviously created a clear vision distance impairment where vehicles trying to get onto Stockton Hill couldn't see oncoming traffic. So we immediately notified Jack and his team, and they went out and they cut those weeds back so pedestrians could navigate the sidewalk and traffic leaving Riata Valley could make a right-hand turn onto Stockton Hill without causing an accident. And then we continue to manage the rest of the weeds issue on the property with the customer through the compliance process. One thing we did find is we come across Council Resolution number 4264, which actually established maintenance of landscaping located in common open spaces along these right-of-ways. This particular one was for Village Tract 1946 C and D on Airway Avenue. Interestingly enough, we received a long stretch along Airway that had this very problem. We found that this particular area, the right-of-way was clear. There were no weeds. So the program and this particular strategy or tool seems to be working quite well. So what we're going to do is we're going to look into incorporating similar language into our subdivision ordinance during the rewrite. If it's working with this particular tract, there's no reason why it shouldn't work with others. And there's an example, which would be just prior to the Heather place along Airway. You see that this is that portion of right-of-way that's typically reserved for landscaping, and it's choked out with weeds. So this would be a violation where the abutting property owners would be responsible to clear this. Just down the road is where that HOA provision was implemented, and there's not an issue. So we think it's a good strategy moving forward to address some of these gray no man land areas, as Manager Foggin put it. So with that, I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Councilors, questions, comments?
I have a question, comment, Mayor.
Please go ahead, Councilor Noah Keener.
Okay, so in the Villas C and D area, there is a homeowners association that is collecting dues, and with those dues, they have that common area. They hire gardening individuals, and that's how that's taken care of. So what we're considering is to create a homeowners association within that other section where the homeowners can pay into it and the common areas would be taken care of. Is that what's happening?
Well, that particular subdivision that's already established, we couldn't, again, I don't know if we can retroactively require it, but moving forward, we can certainly look at that strategy that was used for the Village Tract C and D for future subdivisions, so we don't keep encountering this same issue as we move through the subdivision process. So not retroactively, just moving forward.
So
Yeah.
just to piggyback onto that, Mayor, Councilor Keener, is if the neighborhood, if already established neighborhood decided that they liked that, they certainly could come to some kind of agreement within the neighborhood to take care of that. But yeah, this definitely would be something moving forward, not retroactive.
Okay. I think that when these housing tracts are created and they have homeowners associations, I think it's kind of a deterrent. People don't want to live in there. That's just something to consider too, but I realize we have to take care of the problem.
Thank you. I have a question. Now that's a substantial increase in complaints this year, and perhaps it's because people are more aware through the education the city is doing of the responsibilities to eliminate these weeds on their property. But I've been approached and asked, why is it just complaint driven? And if we see something, why don't we just go ahead and do the process ourselves?
Yeah, and that's, if you recall in the March presentation that we were going to do a hybrid, we just did reactive complaints, so we only enforced weeds if we received a complaint. So this year, we implemented a proactive approach. So we self-created that substantial increase. And yeah, and Kingman Fire has really always participated in weed mitigation as part of their fire mitigation strategies, whether it was formal or informal. So, now that Kingman Fire is partnered with KPD in this weed management along with Public Works. It's kind of a three-pronged approach where we can aggressively and proactively approach this better.
Wow, I'm really glad to hear that. That does explain that huge increase, but that's a good thing to be proactive and reactive. So thank you. Any other comments? Thank you so much for that update. Appreciate it. And we'll move on to the small, I think we've covered this a little bit, but the next order of business is the small, or department report is the Small Business Recovery Incentive Program update.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. You know, it's interesting. We have covered a great deal of it. And so as we were looking at the parklets, pedlets, and talking about the facade grant program, which I think we're going to find a lot of success with, we just thought we would take a couple minutes and just remind the council of all of the things that we've been planning and working on that go hand in hand with what we talked about earlier. And so we just, since it was on the agenda, we thought, well, there may be some curiosity or a need to remind everybody of the other programs that we have in the works to help as well. So I've asked, I believe it's Sylvia again, asked Gary to have Sylvia kind of walk you through where we are, kind of what are the other programs we're working on, or you'll see here rolling out shortly. So Miss Sylvia. Or Gary, I don't know, whoever's been assigned.
Well, actually, I have Josh that's helping me with quite a bit of this presentation this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Josh, and then I'll catch up near the end.
Josh, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, great. Pass the buck. I love it.
Okay, so what we have are some programs that we had put together to assist businesses and to increase our ability to market the community and do some research to figure out who our new market is. So one of the things that we had put in that plan was acquiring and skinning a billboard on the east side of Seligman along Route 66, and we accomplished that back in July. We also had paused some campaigns last fiscal year, and so we had originally included in our budget to have those campaigns conclude this fiscal year. This is with the Arizona Office of Tourism Marketing Cooperative, and so we had reduced the amount that we were going to initially invest into that. And with tonight's consent agenda, it was approved to go ahead and increase that by about $8,000. So those paused campaigns aren't going to hurt our campaigns that we enter into this fiscal year. We'd also worked with a company called C-Source to provide us some data on the customers that are, or the visitors that are coming through, find lookalike markets, identify this updates on a weekly basis, and we can figure out where people are coming from, identify lookalike markets, and market out to those individuals. So those are some of the advertising pieces that we put into the campaign. And we also did some business assistance. So a Facebook marketing grant of $10,000 was budgeted. We launched that a few weeks ago in late July. So we've got 50 campaigns, each at $200 for local businesses to apply, and we will boost those out. We've already had one applicant that had already applied, and we have that set to launch later this month, and I have 2 other interested parties. We also are working on a shop local program. Actually, there's a few different areas of working on a shop local program, but one of them we're working with the Chamber of Commerce. Initially, we were going to launch 2 separate smaller campaign events, but we felt that we could actually make a longer campaign event kind of leading into Black Friday, leading into where local shopping will naturally pick back up. And we're currently working on the Chamber of Commerce. They actually have their board meeting next week where they'll approve or revise the project with us. And then we'll launch that mid-September and run that for 8 or 10 weeks with some gift cards to local businesses. So not only will it provide incentive for customers to go into local businesses, but it will also provide some benefit to the local businesses because we'll be working with them purchasing gift cards for those prize packages. Another one that we're working on is the Google Business Audit. This is kind of a continuance of last fiscal year through the Arizona Office of Tourism Marketing Cooperative. We're going out and we're identifying businesses that don't have their information updated on their Google My Business page, or pictures that are of low quality or inaccurate, and we're trying to go and rectify and flag all of those. So that's a major project we're going to be working on for several months. And then I think most all of the other ones are in Sylvia's court.
Okay, so really, I kind of already went over them earlier, and it was the facade improvement program and parklet petlets. Really, I pretty much covered them. We have about 90,000, as you know, allocated for those two programs, and then we just approved the increase in matching funds. So both programs are now would be now 90% and 10%, so matching funds up to 9,000 each, and we do have several applicants. Really, that's a majority of everything. I'm definitely working with Josh on a lot of these programs. So if you have any questions for either one of us, that's pretty much what I have.
I also wanted to add in, we are looking at a local business foot traffic app called Hound. It's something that's part of the Arizona Office of Tourism Marketing Cooperative. It's similar to Groupon in a way, but a lot of the fees that would generally go to the businesses through this co-op, the city can pick those up. And if we find it successful, we can continue to support that program moving forward after the Arizona Office of Tourism funds run out. We also have a phone call with Local First Arizona tomorrow to see some of their other Shop Local programs. So I just wanted to reiterate that the program that we'll be launching with the Chamber of Commerce next month isn't the only Shop Local program, because we recognize there's going to need to be some kind of Shop Local initiative going out throughout the whole fiscal year to help businesses beyond the holiday season.
And I will just add that on one of the things that we're also doing is looking to put the Shop Local advertising on the cart buses as well. And another aspect of the Shop Local program that's a little bit different twist than the normal ones that you've seen, when they put the gift baskets together, they work with the businesses to have the prizes in the gift baskets. Our program will have the city, as part of our effort, we will actually put the gift baskets together. We will purchase the gifts that go in the baskets, so that it's really zero cost to the businesses that participate, where in a normal Shop Local program, they actually are asked to contribute to those gift baskets. So that's a little twist to that we hope will be helpful. And a big thank you to Josh, Sylvia, and Gary for running these things, investigating and working on these things. They have put some good effort and time into them. So thank you.
Mayor, can I ask a question? On this Shop Local project we're teaming up with the chamber, will that only be open to chamber businesses then?
It would not. We're looking at a program that would be for any brick and mortar business that has a city license that's located within the city limits. That is a small business. So it's not going to be open to Walmart and Home Depot and the larger businesses. We still have to work out the exact criteria for what a smaller business is, but they do not have to be a chamber member.
Good, thank you. We get that question a lot, so I appreciate it.
I have a question related to incentive and recovery and shop and local first Arizona. I understand, I read recently they have other grant programs available now that for some type of assistance to small business for, this is COVID related, but their assistance, I think, for rent or other things. Are we working with them on other types of programs also?
So I think our phone call tomorrow with Local First Arizona is where we're going to be gathering a lot of that information. They are similar to a chamber. They work mostly with their members. And so we understand that there are some abilities for the city to help step in and make those programs available to our businesses in Kingman. And that's really a lot of what we're going to find out tomorrow.
That's really excellent, because when I read that, I thought, I know we're connected with them, but if we have if we have the ability to bring those to Kingman and help our businesses, let's do it if we can. So
Yes,
thank you. Anything else? Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a couple of questions. One on the Shop Local program. Josh mentioned that they're still coming up with the criteria for a definition of a local small business. It seems like it would make sense to say that it's either a local stage 1 or a local stage 2 business by employee size. I think that's what the Small Business Development Center goes on. So hopefully they look at that. My other question would probably be for Sylvia regarding the facade improvement grants. Is there going to be a list of award recipients, the projects that they're doing, and the award amount that's publicly released?
Vice Mayor, yes, there will be a list together. At this point, I don't have the submittals yet. So as I get them and see what they are going to do, and as facade request improvements are approved, then I will have a better list together. Yes.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? Well, thank you. I appreciate all that information, what you've done and what you're doing, what you will do. And I really think that all these efforts to help our business community are wonderful. So let's keep it up. Thank you. The next order of business for the council is, and I'm going to get it right this time, I'm going to do announcements and then I'm going to do council requests, just like it's written. Won't forget the request for future items. But let's start with announcements by mayor, council members, city manager. This is limited to announcements, board and commission, liaison reports, availability and attendance at conferences and seminars. And I'll start with Manager Fagan.
Thank you, Mayor. So our census update is that a lot of our work at the kind of the city has been to just work with our Census Bureau representatives. They are in the process of putting together tracks where they're going to be sending people. And so we're helping them identify low area counts, areas that have been low or slow to be counted or to self-report. So that's where we are with the census. We're pretty happy with what we've been able to do, and we're looking forward to seeing what the Census Bureau can help fill in with their people and their resources. So that's and a big thank you. I've got Sylvia on the line as well. I just want to thank her for spearheading this and being probably I'd say our task force leader and keeping us focused on the census. So thank you for that. The other thing that I just want to bring up as part of the COVID-19, something that we talked about today, the mayor, Chief Rhodes, and I were on a call with the county health department, and the county health department, along with the state, have been able to put together a free testing blitz for the three Tri-Cities, the three cities in the Tri-City area. And so we're trying to put together kind of logistically what that would look like, just so that we can have that additional testing within our community. Obviously, we're trying to get our numbers in line as a county with the governor's executive orders and rules, so that we can have all our businesses up and running and get them back on their feet as quickly as possible. So we're hoping that as a Tri-City area and with the help of the county, that we can actually get enough testing in place so that our numbers are adequate, or low enough, not adequate, low enough to be able to meet the thresholds. So those are the two things that I had to report.
Thank you, Manager Foggin. Councilor Watkins.
Madam Mayor, I have nothing to add tonight.
Thank you. Okay. Councilor White.
I have nothing to add either. Thank you.
Councilor Scott Staley.
Nothing tonight.
Nothing tonight. Councilor Nelson.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Malakino.
I do have something, Mayor.
Yay,
I just wanted to let everyone know that the Jerry Ambrose Veterans Council is raffling off a grill that was donated by the Geo Group. It's a really big grill. There's a picture of it on their website at www.javc.org. You can purchase from the website tickets, 6 for $10 or $2 each, or you could just make a donation, and the money goes towards the shelter that's being renovated downtown to provide the veterans with transitional housing and counseling, job training, and that type of thing. It's going to start back up October 1st, the construction, and it should take about 8 months to complete, and it should house about 25 veterans. So this is just really important to our community. I just really want to encourage everyone to buy some tickets for that grill, or just, at least please make a donation to these well-deserved veterans. That's it.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yesterday afternoon, I attended the Airport Advisory Commission meeting. The rate study for the lease rates, hangars, and tie downs and all these things was, the draft of that document was presented to the commission. I assume that the council will be seeing that shortly. And also an update on some of the grant issues, some of the airport maintenance issues was covered. They covered a lot of topics. It was over 2 hours long, so appreciate that group. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Well, I actually attended that one also by electronically, and it was a long meeting, and they cover a lot of territory, and we appreciate all of the staff and commission work that is being done to improve our airport. Thank you, Manager Foggin, for mentioning the call today. I also had that on my list about the testing blitz, because I think that's going to be an opportunity for citizens that want to be tested. And I would only add that it's going to take place sometime, if we understand this correctly, between September 1st and September 15th. But in all three cities, as Manager Foggin said, are going to be participating. And so it's a fast timeline, and I appreciate the effort it's going to take to get this logistically set up. But it is an opportunity, and we want to be part of it. The only other, let's see, I wanted to mention the unveiling of the new mural down at the Powerhouse and Visitor Center. And I wanted to give some kudos to Josh and to Arizona at Work, our partner, for a very nice unveiling ceremony last Friday, and I was able to attend. And it was really nice because the artists were there. The team that actually created that mural, Wish You Were Here, and also the partners that were all involved. And I'll miss some of them, but it was Main Street and Route 66 Association and Chamber. I think there was a lot of partner involvement, but the ones that, you know, run the youth mural program is Arizona at Work. They're a great partner for us in Kingman. And I love the mural, and I hope everyone will enjoy it. If you haven't seen it, just take a ride down to the Powerhouse and take a look. And then one other thing, I attended the meeting. I'm on the steering committee, as I've mentioned, for the Northwest Attainment Steering Committee, which is truly was formed as part of the Center for Arizona's Future and Achieve 60 to improve our workforce pipeline, and especially in gaining credentials and degrees for our community. And the steering committee set up a construct so that each city, Bullhead, Havasu, Kingman, and actually in La Paz too, Parker, has a hub, a hub leader that brings together a group of people in each city that's really going to focus and decide on the pipelines that they're going to focus on and the metrics they're going to do. And so we have a meeting on the 24th, I think, and this is a real kickoff meeting for the hubs and the members of each hub. And I know that Donna Davis, our colleague in Phoenix, is trying to get Governor Ducey to say a few words. And I appreciate that Mr. Kellogg's going to be on it from the city on our hub. And I also wanted to mention that Councilor-elect Chair Semele has taken on the hub lead role, and that's a pretty important lead. So very good contribution to education and our workforce development initiatives. So that's all I have this evening. And I will not forget tonight to ask for council requests for future reports and updates. Are there any councilor requests for future reports and updates? I thought this also used to say agenda items. Something changed here. Mine doesn't say that anymore.
Madam Mayor, I would, if I may, ask Manager Foggin. I know that we had the issue about annexation of phase 2 of our airport. That was on our agenda on the 19th of May. And I'm wondering if he's going to be able to bring that back to us, or hopefully he'd be able to bring that back to us the second meeting in September. That would give staff about 4 months to give an initial look at that.
We are working on it, and depending on where we are, we will make every effort to get it to you as quickly as possible. So that we will shoot for that date and let you know.
Great, appreciate it.
Yep.
And then the only other thing that I'd like to mention, and I don't know if it's possible or not, but I know that we've been having these Zoom meetings since April. And I know that Bullhead is maybe holding some in-person meetings. Is there any way for us to migrate back to some sort of an in-person setting to where we can social distance, yet still have people come in and speak in front of a podium or be a part of the public participation in person? That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, our effort to get it into the county, the only ability we have to do that.
Really can't have a discussion. This is just for future agenda items.
Yeah, good point. Yep, we will talk about it.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Anything else? Okay. Well, at this moment, I have no requests myself either, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mayor, I will motion that we adjourn.
Thank you, Counselor. And do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, aye? Aye. I don't think we have any opposition. Thank you, everyone. This is a long meeting, but it was very productive. Have a good night. This
Good night.
meeting is adjourned.